Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life Unraveling. Wade Wu had always prided himself on building the perfect life from nothing. At 42, he owned 3 successful auto repair shops across the county, a sprawling house in the hills, and what he believed was a loving marriage to Jessica Wu. His calloused hands and sharp mind had clawed their way up from poverty, and he never forgot where he came from, or who helped him get there. The autumn evening started like any other. Wade was reviewing quarterly reports when Jessica announced she was going to visit her sister Gail McIntosh across town. Nothing unusual about that. The sisters were close, and Jessica often stayed overnight when they had their wine and movie nights. Wade kissed her goodbye, noting how carefully she'd applied her makeup for a casual evening with family. 3 hours later, Wade found himself following behind a patrol car on Highway 47, his stomach churning with an inexplicable dread. Jessica's BMW had been pulled over for speeding, something that never happened. She was the most cautious driver he knew, almost annoyingly so. Officer Seth Mayer was young, maybe early 30s, with the kind of earnest face that still believed in doing the right thing. As he ran Jessica's license, Wade noticed the officer's expression change from routine boredom to something much more serious. The officer's eyes kept darting between the computer screen and Jessica, then toward Wade with what looked like pity. "Sir," Officer Mayer called out, approaching Wade with hesitant steps. "I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not go home tonight. Get somewhere safe." Wade felt the blood drain from his face. "What? Why? What's wrong?" The officer glanced around nervously, then pressed a folded piece of paper into Wade's palm. "I can't explain now. It's horrifying. Legally, I can't do anything, but—" He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That woman isn't who you think she is, and neither is the man waiting at your house." Wade's world tilted. "What man?" "Read the note. Tonight. Don't confront anyone. Just be smart about this." Officer Mayer handed Jessica back her license with a professional smile, but Wade caught the look of disgust that flashed across his face. As the patrol car drove away, Jessica returned to their car, chattering nervously about the officer being strange and asking odd questions. Wade nodded absently, the note burning like acid in his pocket. He suggested they get dinner before heading to Gail's place, buying himself time to think. At the restaurant, Wade excused himself to the bathroom and unfolded the note with shaking hands. "Your wife has been seeing Patrick Mullins for 8 months. Tonight he's in your house, going through your safe." She gave him the combination. "There's more, much more. She's been planning this for years. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more. A friend who remembers you helped his family when no one else would." Wade stared at the words until they blurred. Patrick Mullins. He knew that name. Patrick had worked at his first shop 5 years ago, a charming man with quick hands and quicker excuses for why cash kept coming up short. Wade had fired him without pressing charges, believing everyone deserved a second chance. Apparently, Patrick had been planning his revenge ever since. But Jessica had been married to him for 15 years. They'd built everything together, survived his mother's cancer, her father's bankruptcy, countless struggles that should have brought them closer. Wade folded the note and walked back to the table, his face a careful mask. Jessica was texting someone, her phone angled away from him, something he'd never noticed before but now seemed glaringly obvious. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked without looking up. "Perfect," Wade replied, and for the first time in his marriage, he meant the opposite. The drive to Gail's house was 20 minutes of torture. Jessica kept checking her phone, and Wade found himself cataloging every lie she might have told, every late night at work, every weekend trip to visit college friends he'd never met. The foundation of his life wasn't just cracking, it was revealing that there had never been a foundation at all. When they arrived at Gail's house, Wade claimed he had a work emergency and needed to head back. Jessica's relief was so palpable it was almost comical. She kissed him goodbye with the same lips that had probably been kissing Patrick Mullins, and Wade had to clench his fist to keep from grabbing her throat right there. But Wade hadn't built a business empire by acting on impulse. He'd learned patience from his father, strategy from his grandfather, and ruthlessness from the streets that had tried to keep him down. If Jessica and Patrick thought they could destroy everything he'd built, they were about to learn what a mistake that was. As he drove toward downtown instead of home, Wade began a plan. The couple thought they were playing him, but they had no idea they'd just started a game with someone who never lost. Chapter 2. The Hunter's Education. Wade checked into the Riverside Hotel using cash, a habit from his youth that his legitimate success had never quite erased. From his room on the 5th floor, he had a clear view of his house 3 miles away, nestled in the hills like a beacon of betrayal. He called his lawyer, Oliver Doyle, who owed Wade more favors than either man could count. Oliver had been a struggling public defender when Wade's first shop was vandalized by local gang members. Wade had personally hunted down every one of them, and the message he delivered had been clear enough that Oliver never had to worry about his family's safety again. Oliver, I need surveillance equipment, professional grade, and I need it delivered to my hotel room within 2 hours. Wade, it's almost midnight. 2 hours, Oliver. And I need complete documentation on Patrick Mullins. Employment history, criminal record, financial statements, known associates. Everything. The silence on the other end stretched long enough for Wade to hear Oliver's ethical concerns wrestling with his debt of gratitude. Gratitude 1. I'll make some calls. While waiting, Wade sat by the window and watched his house through a pair of binoculars he'd retrieved from his car. At 12:47 a.m., a figure emerged from the side door. His side door, the one only family was supposed to use. Even from this distance, Wade could make out Patrick's distinctive swagger, the way he moved like he owned whatever space he occupied. Patrick was carrying something. A bag that looked suspiciously like the emergency cash stash Wade kept in his study. Wade's phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, staying at Gail's tonight. She's having a hard time. Love you. He didn't respond. Oliver arrived personally at 2:15 a.m., carrying a case that looked like it belonged to a private investigator. GPS trackers, audio surveillance, micro cameras, and a complete digital file on your friend Mullins. He paused. Wade, whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm thinking of protecting what's mine. The legal system. The legal system protects people like them. Wade's voice was flat, emotionless. I protect people like me. Oliver left without another word, and Wade spent the next hour studying Patrick Mullins' life like a general studying enemy territory. The man was a textbook narcissist with a long history of seducing married women, draining their bank accounts, and disappearing before consequences could catch up. He'd done it in 3 different states, always staying just on the right side of criminal charges. But Patrick had made a crucial error this time. He'd chosen Wade Wu's wife. Wade began with the surveillance equipment, planning entry points and camera angles. But as he studied Patrick's pattern of behavior, a much more elegant plan began to form. Patrick wasn't just a thief. He was predictable. He followed the same playbook every time. Seduce the wife, gain access to finances, create dependency, then extract everything possible before moving on. The pattern suggested Patrick would want to completely destroy Wade's life, not just rob him. That meant this wasn't just about money. It was about power, humiliation, the complete conquest of another man's world. Which meant Patrick would get careless, because he'd done this before and never faced real consequences. Wade smiled for the first time since reading the officer's note. Patrick Mullins had no idea what real consequences looked like. By dawn, Wade had a preliminary plan. He would give Patrick exactly what he wanted, complete access to Wade's world. But like a spider offering its web to a fly, that access would become a trap. Wade's phone rang. Jessica. Hi, honey. How did your emergency go? Fine. Just a problem with the Morrison contract. The lie came easily. How's Gail? Better. Listen, I might need to stay another night or 2. She's really struggling. Of course. Take care of your sister. After hanging up, Wade looked up Gail McIntosh's phone number. Time to test just how elaborate Jessica's deception was. Gail, it's Wade. I just wanted to check on you and make sure you're okay. The confusion in Gail's voice was answer enough. She was fine, hadn't seen Jessica in 2 weeks, and had no idea what Wade was talking about. Wade thanked her and hung up. adding another lie to his mental ledger. Jessica hadn't just betrayed him. She'd crafted an entire alternate reality to do it. The sister visits, the work emergencies, the girls' weekends. How much of his wife's life had been fiction? But Wade had grown up on the streets before building his empire. And one thing the streets had taught him was that people who lived in fantasies died when reality came calling. It was time to introduce Patrick and Jessica to reality. Chapter 3: The Foundation of War. Wade returned home that afternoon, walking through his house like a crime scene investigator. Everything looked normal, but now he knew what to look for. The safe in his study had been opened and closed, but whoever had done it was skilled. No scratches on the lock, no disturbed dust patterns. Professional. He checked the hidden camera he'd installed in his study years ago after a break-in scare. The timestamp showed Patrick Mullins in Wade's private space at 11:23 p.m., photographing documents, copying files, and pocketing what looked like Wade's emergency cash reserve and backup credit cards. But the most chilling moment came when Patrick held up Wade's wedding photo, smiled at it like he was sharing a private joke, then carefully placed it face down on the desk. Wade watched the footage 3 times, memorizing every detail of Patrick's movements, his expressions, his casual violation of everything Wade held sacred. Then he made a decision that would have consequences far beyond what Jessica and Patrick could imagine. He called his old friend Clarence Combs. Clarence ran a security consulting firm, which was a polite way of saying he handled problems that couldn't be solved through legal channels. They'd grown up in the same neighborhood, and when Clarence's daughter had needed surgery that insurance wouldn't cover, Wade had paid for it without being asked. That kind of debt ran deeper than money. Clarence, I need a full team. Surveillance, counter-surveillance, and asset protection. And I need people who understand that some problems require permanent solutions. How permanent are we talking, Wade? I'll let you know. Within hours, Wade's house was wired with professional surveillance equipment that made Oliver's setup look like children's toys. But more importantly, Clarence had provided something even more valuable: information. Your boy Patrick has debts, Clarence reported over dinner at a truck stop outside town. Serious debts, to serious people. He owes money to some Russian import-export specialists who don't accept payment plans. Word is, he needs a big score soon, or he's going to have more problems than a cheating wife can solve. How much does he owe? $250,000, plus interest that compounds daily. Wade leaned back in his booth, pieces clicking into place. So Jessica isn't just his target. She's his lifeline. Gets better. I ran some checks on your wife's financial activity. She's been moving money for months. Small amounts, different accounts, always just under the reporting thresholds. Someone taught her how to wash money without triggering flags. The waitress refilled Wade's coffee, and he waited until she was gone before speaking. How much? Best estimate? She's moved about $400,000 over the past year. Money that came from your business accounts, your personal savings, even small amounts from your retirement fund. Wade's vision went red around the edges. For $100,000. Money that represented years of 18-hour days. Deals made in back alleys and boardrooms. Risks that had paid off through sweat and blood and sheer force of will. There's more, Clarence continued. The money didn't just disappear. It's been invested. Real estate purchases in Patrick's name, some offshore accounts, a few business ventures that don't exist on paper. They've been building a future together, Wade. A future financed by your past. Wade set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. I want to know everything. Every account, every purchase, every lie they've told each other. I want to know what they eat for breakfast and what they dream about at night. And then, Wade met his old friend's eyes, and Clarence saw something there that made him glad they were on the same side. Then I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. That night, Wade lay in his bed, the bed he'd shared with Jessica for 15 years, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he would begin implementing a plan that would make Patrick and Jessica's betrayal look like a children's game. They thought they were stealing his life, but they were about to discover that some men couldn't be stolen from. They could only be awakened. His phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. Miss you. Home, tomorrow night. Can't wait to see you. Wade typed back. Can't wait either. We need to talk about our future. For once, he was telling the truth. Chapter 4. The Web Expands. Wade woke before dawn and went through his morning routine like a man preparing for war. Coffee, shower, workout in his home gym, then a careful review of the surveillance footage from the night before. Jessica had returned home at 2:47 a.m., moving through the house like a ghost, checking her phone constantly, even going so far as to smell Wade's pillow to see if he'd been there. When she finally woke at 9:30, Wade was already gone, ostensibly to work, but actually to begin phase 1 of his plan. His first stop was the office of Maria Gamble, a private investigator who specialized in financial crimes. Maria had helped Wade investigate a potential partner years ago and had uncovered embezzlement that saved him from a disastrous merger. She was thorough, discreet, and had no qualms about operating in legal gray areas. "I need complete financial profiles on these two," Wade said, sliding photos of Jessica and Patrick across her desk. "Every account, every transaction, every asset, legal and illegal." Maria studied the photos. "Your wife? My soon-to-be ex-wife. This isn't going to be cheap, Wade. Deep financial investigations take time and resources." Wade placed a briefcase on her desk and opened it. $50,000 in cash. "How much time do you need?" 72 hours. "You have 48. Next, Wade visited his accountant, Hal Stevens, who managed the books for all 3 of his auto shops. Hal was meticulous to the point of obsession, which made him perfect for what Wade needed. "Hal, I need you to restructure everything. Transfer ownership of the shops to a new corporation, move all liquid assets to accounts Jessica can't access, and create a paper trail that shows the businesses are struggling financially." Hal's face went pale. "Wade, if you're going through a divorce, this could be considered asset hiding. The courts won't be involved." Wade's tone was flat. "I'm not getting divorced, Hal. I'm getting justice." The difference in his voice made Hal stop asking questions. By afternoon, Wade had visited each of his shops, ostensibly for routine inspections, but actually to plant seeds of a much larger plan. He spoke privately with key employees, asking carefully crafted questions about loyalty, about what they would do if the business faced serious threats, about whether they could keep sensitive information confidential. Wade had learned long ago that loyalty couldn't be bought, but it could be cultivated. Every person he spoke with remembered specific kindnesses. The Christmas bonuses when their kids needed surgery, the promotions when other shops wouldn't hire them, the second chances when their own mistakes could have cost them everything. By evening, Wade had assembled a network of allies who would do almost anything to protect the man who had protected them. The final stop of the day was the most important, a meeting with James Hernandez, a man whose official title was business consultant, but whose actual function was solving problems that couldn't be solved through conventional means. They met at a private club downtown, the kind of place where conversations weren't recorded and memberships couldn't be bought with money alone. "I have a situation," Wade began, "that requires a delicate touch." James listened without interruption as Wade outlined the betrayal, the theft, and the complete violation of everything he'd built. When Wade finished, James was quiet for a long moment. "What's your endgame, Wade?" "Complete destruction. I want them to lose everything they've stolen from me and everything they think they own. I want them to understand what it feels like to have their entire life revealed as a lie. And if they fight back..." Wade's smile was cold. "They're welcome to try." James nodded slowly. "This isn't just about money, is it?" "No, it's about respect, about consequences, about teaching 2 people that there are men in this world who can't be stolen from, only awakened. I can have resources in place within a week. You have 3 days." Wade drove home to find Jessica cooking dinner, humming softly to herself, playing the role of devoted wife with an expertise that would have been admirable if it weren't so completely false. She kissed him when he walked in, and Wade had to suppress the urge to grab her throat and demand the truth. Instead, he played his own role, the trusting husband, the successful businessman, the man too comfortable in his life to notice it being systematically dismantled around him. "How was work?" Jessica asked, her voice bright with false concern. "Interesting," Wade replied. "I've been thinking about expanding, maybe opening a 4th shop." Jessica's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "That sounds expensive." I've been looking at a place across town. Perfect location, but it would require a significant investment. Wade watched her face carefully. Might need to liquidate some assets to make it work. The flash of panic in Jessica's eyes was so brief that someone who didn't know what to look for might have missed it. But Wade saw it, cataloged it, and filed it away for future use. Maybe we should discuss any major financial decisions together, Jessica said carefully. Of course. After all, we're partners in everything. That night, as Jessica slept beside him, Wade lay awake planning the systematic destruction of two people who had made the mistake of thinking Wade Wu was just another mark to be conned and discarded. They were about to learn that some men weren't victims. They were predators. Chapter 5. The Trap Springs Shut. The call came at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after Wade had set his plan in motion. Maria Gamble's voice was tight with excitement and disgust in equal measure. Wade, you need to see this. Can you be at my office in an hour? Wade arrived to find Maria's desk covered with financial documents, photographs, and bank records that painted a picture of systematic betrayal that went far deeper than he'd imagined. Your wife is smart, Maria began, but Patrick Mullins is smarter and greedier. She spread out a series of bank statements. Jessica has been moving your money for 14 months, not 8. But here's the interesting part. Patrick's been moving her money too. Every account she set up, every investment she made with your stolen funds, he's been skimming from. She thinks they have $400,000 together. He's actually got closer to 600, and 300 of it is hidden from her. Wade studied the documents, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. He's planning to disappear. More than that. Look at this. Maria produced a lease agreement. Patrick signed a 2-year lease on a house in Jessica's name, using her social security number and forged signature. If things go south, she's liable for 24 months of rent on a place she's never seen. Where? Costa Rica. Non-extradition jurisdiction for financial crimes under $50,000 per incident. Wade leaned back in his chair, pieces of the puzzle clicking together. Patrick wasn't just stealing from Wade. He was setting Jessica up to take the fall for everything. When the time came to disappear, Patrick would leave Jessica holding the bag for fraud charges while he lived comfortably on money stolen from both of them. There's more, Maria continued. Patrick's been recording everything. Phone calls, hotel meetings, even intimate encounters. He's got enough evidence to destroy Jessica's reputation and implicate her in every aspect of the theft, while painting himself as a manipulated victim. Wade felt something that might have been admiration for Patrick's thoroughness, if it weren't directed at destroying Wade's life. The man was a professional predator who had perfected the art of leaving his accomplices to face consequences alone. But Patrick had made one crucial error. He'd assumed Wade Wu was just another mark. I need copies of everything, Wade said, and I need you to do one more thing. That afternoon, Wade implemented the next phase of his plan. He called Jessica at work and asked her to meet him for lunch at their favorite restaurant, the same place where they'd had their first date 16 years ago. Jessica arrived looking beautiful and nervous, checking her phone constantly, a habit Wade now recognized as Patrick maintenance. I've been thinking about our future, Wade began, echoing the text he'd sent nights ago, about what we want out of life. What do you mean? Wade pulled out a folder and set it on the table between them. I think it's time for us to make some changes. Big changes. Jessica's face went pale as she opened the folder and saw the first document. A property listing for a house in Costa Rica, complete with photographs and a purchase agreement. Wade, what is this? Our new life. I've been looking into retiring early, maybe moving somewhere we can really be ourselves. Wade watched Jessica's face carefully. I found this place through a business associate, Patrick Mullins. You remember Patrick, don't you? He used to work for me. Jessica's hand trembled as she turned the pages. I don't understand. Patrick's been helping me research expatriate living. Taxes, property laws, the best ways to transfer assets internationally without triggering government oversight. Wade's voice was casual, conversational. He's got quite a bit of experience with international finance. The color drained from Jessica's face as she realized Wade was describing exactly what she and Patrick had been doing with his money. But there was more. Wade was describing it like it was his idea, like he was planning to do it legally and openly. Wade, I don't think. Patrick suggested we could liquidate most of our domestic assets and reinvest them offshore. He estimates we could have everything transferred within a month if we move quickly. Jessica's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, and Wade saw her face go from pale to gray. Whatever Patrick had just sent her, it wasn't good news. I need to go, Jessica said suddenly, closing the folder. I'm not feeling well. Of course. Take the folder with you. Look it over, and we can discuss it tonight. Wade watched Jessica hurry out of the restaurant, clutching the folder like it was evidence of her own execution, which in a way it was, because Jessica now had to choose. Warn Patrick that Wade somehow knew about their plan, risking exposure of their entire relationship, or stay quiet and hope Wade's interest in Costa Rica was coincidental. Either choice would lead to the same result. Patrick would realize the situation had become too dangerous and would begin implementing his exit strategy, which meant he would begin cutting Jessica loose. Wade's phone buzzed with a text from Clarence. Package delivered. Phase 3 was ready to begin. That evening, Wade came home to find Jessica pacing the kitchen, the Costa Rica folder open on the counter, her phone pressed to her ear. She hung up quickly when she saw him. Everything okay? Wade asked. Fine. Just work stuff. Jessica's smile was strained. I looked over those documents. It's an interesting idea, but maybe we should think about it more. Actually, I was hoping we could speed things up. Patrick thinks there might be some regulatory changes coming that could make transfers more difficult. Jessica's face went through a series of micro-expressions: fear, confusion, calculation, desperation. Wade cataloged each one. Maybe we should meet with Patrick together, she said finally, so he can explain the details to both of us. Wade smiled. Great idea. How about tomorrow night? After Jessica went to bed, Wade called Clarence. Tomorrow night, Patrick Mullins is going to realize he's been outplayed, Wade said. I need you to make sure he doesn't have any options for running. Consider it done. Wade hung up and walked to his study, where he opened his safe and removed the item Clarence had delivered that afternoon. A digital recorder containing every conversation Patrick and Jessica had shared over the past month, courtesy of surveillance equipment that made their hotel room into a confessional booth. Wade had heard his wife's voice describing how easy it would be to bleed Wade dry, how Patrick made her feel alive in ways Wade never could, how they would disappear once they had enough of his money. But the most interesting conversation had been the one where Patrick explained to Jessica how he would eventually need to cut ties cleanly when the time came to relocate permanently. Jessica had no idea she was talking to a man who was planning to destroy her life along with Wade's. Wade smiled as he locked the recorder back in his safe. Tomorrow night, Jessica and Patrick would discover that they weren't the only ones capable of planning a betrayal. They were just the only ones stupid enough to think they could get away with it. Chapter 6. The Crucible. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at Morton Steakhouse, neutral territory where both Jessica and Patrick would feel comfortable. Wade arrived early and selected a corner booth with clear sight lines to all entrances. Old habits from a youth spent in environments where sitting with your back to a door could be fatal. Jessica arrived first, her nervousness obvious in the way she kept smoothing her hair and checking her phone. She dressed carefully, professional but attractive, the kind of outfit that suggested serious business while still appealing to the men in her life. Patrick entered exactly at 7, and Wade had to admire his composure. The man showed no sign of recognition beyond a polite smile, no indication that he'd been systematically looting Wade's life for over a year. He was good at his craft. Wade, good to see you again, Patrick said, extending his hand with perfect confidence. Jessica's told me you're interested in some offshore opportunities. Very interested, Wade replied, studying Patrick's face. I understand you have considerable experience with international asset management. Some, Patrick said modestly. I've helped a few clients diversify their holdings in favorable jurisdictions. Wade nodded and pulled out a briefcase. I've brought some documentation you might find interesting. Patrick's eyes flicked to the briefcase, then to Jessica, who had gone very still. Wade opened the briefcase and removed 3 folders, setting them on the table with deliberate precision. The first folder contains financial record from my businesses over the past 18 months, Wade began. Revenue, expenses, asset transfers, the usual. Patrick relaxed slightly. This was familiar territory. The second folder contained surveillance photographs taken over the past month. Patrick's face didn't change, but Wade caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Jessica made a small sound that might have been a whimper. The third folder contains transcripts of conversations between various parties regarding my finances, my marriage, and certain planned relocations to non-extradition territories. The silence that followed was profound. Patrick's hand had stopped moving toward his water glass. Jessica was staring at the folders like they were venomous snakes. Now, Wade continued conversationally, we can discuss this like civilized people, or we can involve other parties. Your choice. Patrick recovered first, as Wade had expected. Predators were always quick to assess new threats. Wade, I think there might be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Wade opened the first folder and removed a bank statement. Jessica, would you like to explain to Patrick why your signature appears on this withdrawal authorization for $50,000 from my business account? Jessica's face crumpled. Wade, please. Or Patrick, perhaps you'd like to explain why you're listed as the beneficiary on a life insurance policy Jessica took out on me 6 months ago. That got Patrick's attention. Wade had saved this revelation for maximum impact, and the look of genuine surprise on Patrick's face told him everything he needed to know. Patrick hadn't known about the insurance policy, which meant Jessica had been planning contingencies that didn't include her lover. Life insurance? Patrick's voice was carefully controlled, but Wade caught the edge of betrayal underneath. $2 million, Wade said, with Jessica as the primary beneficiary and Patrick Mullins as secondary. Interesting arrangement, don't you think? Patrick turned to Jessica with an expression that would have been terrifying if Wade hadn't been enjoying it so much. You didn't mention any insurance policies. I wanted to protect us. Protect us? Or protect yourself? Wade leaned back and watched as the alliance between his wife and her lover began to fracture in real time. This was why he'd included the insurance information, even though discovering it had been the most chilling moment of his investigation. Jessica hadn't just been stealing from him. She'd been considering whether his death might be more profitable than his betrayal. There's more, Wade said, opening the second folder. Patrick, are you familiar with the name Arturo Haynes? Patrick's face went white. How do you? Arturo is a business associate of mine. Has been for years. Imagine my surprise when he mentioned that someone had approached him about arranging an accident for a prominent local businessman. This was a lie, but Wade delivered it with such casual confidence that both Jessica and Patrick believed it completely. The art of psychological warfare was making your enemies destroy themselves with their own guilt and paranoia. Wade, Jessica whispered, we never what? Never planned to kill me? Or never planned to get caught? Patrick stood abruptly. I think this conversation is over. Sit down, Wade said quietly, and something in his voice made Patrick freeze. You haven't heard the best part yet. Wade opened the third folder and removed a photograph of Patrick entering a hotel room, followed by another photograph of him leaving 3 hours later with a briefcase. That's the Riverside Hotel, room 237. Last Tuesday night. The briefcase contains approximately $150,000 in cash that Jessica doesn't know about. Jessica turned to Patrick with an expression of dawning horror. What is he talking about? Or we could discuss the house in Costa Rica that Patrick leased in your name, Jessica. The one you'll be liable for even after he disappears with the money you've both been stealing from me. The trap was now fully sprung. Patrick realized he'd been outmaneuvered. Jessica realized she'd been betrayed by both men in her life, and Wade sat back to watch them tear each other apart. You bastard, Jessica hissed at Patrick. You were planning to leave me holding everything. And you were planning to murder your husband. Patrick shot back. Don't pretend you're innocent in this. Wade smiled. Actually, you're both going to have bigger problems than each other very soon. He removed his phone and showed them the screen, which displayed a text message. Package secured. Awaiting instructions. Clarence Combs has been monitoring this conversation. He's also been monitoring both of your residences, your financial accounts, and your communications. In approximately 10 minutes, federal agents are going to raid Patrick's apartment and Jessica's office. This was another lie, but Wade was counting on panic to prevent logical thinking. What they'll find is evidence of systematic fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. They'll also find evidence that Jessica has been embezzling from her own company to fund this operation. Jessica's face went ashen. She worked as an accountant for a major firm, and any financial irregularities in her work would end her career even if they didn't result in criminal charges. Here's what's going to happen, Wade continued. Patrick, you're going to transfer every penny you've stolen from me back to my accounts. All of it, including the money you've hidden from Jessica. And if I refuse? Wade's smile was cold. Then you'll find out what happens when you steal from someone who grew up in neighborhoods where thieves didn't live long enough to repeat their mistakes. Patrick's bravado cracked. You're threatening me? I'm promising you. Wade turned to Jessica. And you, my dear wife, are going to sign divorce papers that leave you with exactly what you brought to this marriage 15 years ago. Nothing. Wade, please. You had 15 years to be honest with me. You had 1,000 opportunities to be the woman I thought I married. Instead, you chose to be a thief and a whore. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Wade stood and placed $500 on the table. This covers dinner. You have 24 hours to comply with my terms. After that, other people will handle the situation, and they won't be as generous as I'm being. Wade walked away, leaving Jessica and Patrick to face the wreckage of their carefully planned betrayal. Behind him, he could hear them starting to argue, accusations flying, the sound of two predators turning on each other when their prey proved too dangerous to handle. The real revenge was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. Wade didn't go home that night. Instead, he drove to his first auto shop, the one he'd built with borrowed money and 18-hour days when he was 25 and hungry enough to fight for every dollar. He sat in his office until dawn, watching surveillance footage of Patrick and Jessica's increasingly desperate phone calls and text messages. By 3 a.m., Patrick had attempted to access 3 different bank accounts, only to discover that Clarence's people had frozen all his assets pending federal investigation, a fiction that would hold long enough for Wade's purposes. Jessica had called in sick to work and spent 2 hours frantically searching her apartment for documents that would prove her innocence of crimes she was actually guilty of. Wade's phone rang at 6:15 a.m. Patrick, Wade, we need to talk. I'm listening. This has gone too far. Let's work something out. Wade smiled. Desperation always sounded the same, regardless of who was wearing it. I gave you my terms yesterday. Have you complied? I can't transfer money from frozen accounts. Then you'd better figure out how to unfreeze them. Wade, be reasonable. I'm being reasonable. Unreasonable would be letting Clarence handle this conversation. The line went quiet for a long moment. What do you want? I want you to disappear, Patrick. Permanently. I want you to understand that stealing from Wade Wu was the worst mistake of your life, and I want you to spend whatever time you have left remembering that lesson. And Jessica? Wade's voice went cold. Jessica is my wife. What happens to her is between her and me. He hung up and immediately called Clarence. How long until Patrick cracks completely? He's already cracking. My boys picked up some interesting chatter this morning. Seems Patrick's been in contact with those Russian friends of his, trying to negotiate more time to pay his debts. And Russians aren't known for their patience. Word is they're sending someone to discuss the matter with Patrick personally. Wade felt a dark satisfaction settle in his chest. Patrick's past was catching up with him at exactly the moment when his future was disappearing. Perfect timing. Make sure the Russians know where to find him. Already handled. Wade's second call was to Oliver Doyle. I need divorce papers drawn up. Adultery, fraud, theft of marital assets. I want everything protected under irreconcilable differences with evidence of criminal activity. Wade, if you have evidence of criminal activity, you should involve law enforcement. Law enforcement moves too slowly. I need this handled privately. What about Jessica? She'll fight this. Wade's laugh was humorless. Jessica is going to be too busy trying to stay out of prison to fight anything. By noon, Wade had received confirmation that Patrick had attempted to flee the state, only to discover that his passport had been flagged for suspicious financial activity. TSA had detained him for 3 hours before releasing him with a warning that his travel was being monitored. Wade's third call of the day was to Jessica. "We need to meet." Her voice was shaky, defeated. "I'll sign whatever you want." "Good. My lawyer's office, 3 p.m. "Wade, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry." Wade considered this for a moment. "No, you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." The divorce proceedings took less than an hour. Jessica signed every document without reading them, her hands shaking with exhaustion and fear. When it was over, she looked at Wade with tears in her eyes. "What happens now? Now you learn to live with the consequences of your choices. Will you press charges?" Wade studied his ex-wife's face, seeing perhaps for the first time the person she actually was beneath the mask she'd worn for 15 years. Weak, selfish, willing to destroy anyone to get what she wanted, but ultimately a small person who had made the mistake of trying to prey on someone stronger. "No," he said finally. "You're not worth the effort." The relief on Jessica's face was pathetic. She actually thought she was getting away with it. Wade walked out of the lawyer's office a free man, but he wasn't finished. Not yet. That evening, he sat in his study and made one final call. "Clarence, it's time." "You sure about this, Wade?" "I'm sure." 2 hours later, Wade received a text message with an address and a time. He drove across town to a warehouse district he'd known well in his youth, places where problems were solved permanently and questions weren't asked. Patrick Mullins was waiting for him, tied to a chair in the center of an empty building. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, and his eyes held the desperate terror of a man who had finally realized the game was over. "Wade," Patrick gasped as Wade approached. "Thank God. These men, they're insane. They think I owe them money." Wade pulled up a chair and sat down facing Patrick. "You do owe them money. $250,000 plus interest. That's impossible. I never borrowed from Russians." "No, but you stole money that was going to be used to pay them back." Wade's voice was calm, conversational. "You see, Patrick, I've been doing business with Arturo Haynes for years. When I needed investors for my first shop, Arturo connected me with some international financiers. Russians, as it happens." Patrick's face went white. "You paid them back years ago." "I did, with money that technically belonged to you, since you'd stolen it from me." Wade smiled. "Which means you owe them the money I used to pay my debt, with 15 years of compound interest." The math was fictional, but Patrick was too terrified to question it. Sometimes the most effective lies were the ones that sounded just plausible enough. "I don't have that kind of money." "I know. That's why we're here." Wade stood and walked to where Clarence was waiting with 2 other men Patrick probably recognized from his nightmares. "Patrick Mullins," Wade said formally, "you made the mistake of thinking you could steal from me. You made the mistake of thinking you could seduce my wife and destroy my life. Most importantly, you made the mistake of thinking I was just another mark to be conned and discarded." Wade nodded to Clarence. "You were wrong." The last thing Patrick saw was Wade Wu walking away, leaving him to face the consequences of a life built on destroying other people's trust. Chapter 8. The Price of Betrayal. Wade didn't watch what happened to Patrick Mullins. He didn't need to. Some lessons were more effective when they remained private between teacher and student, and Wade had taught enough lessons in his youth to know that Patrick would understand the message clearly. 3 days later, Patrick's disappearance made the local news as a missing person case. His apartment had been abandoned, his car found at the airport, and there were conflicting reports about whether he'd boarded a flight to Mexico or simply vanished entirely. The police investigation was perfunctory. Patrick Mullins had no family, few friends, and a history of leaving town abruptly. People like him disappeared all the time. Wade felt no guilt about Patrick's fate. In his experience, men who made careers out of destroying other people's lives rarely lived long enough to enjoy retirement. Wade had simply accelerated the inevitable. But Jessica was a different matter entirely. Wade found her on a Thursday evening, sitting alone in the same restaurant where they'd had their confrontation with Patrick. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of consequences she'd never imagined she'd have to carry. "I heard about Patrick," she said without looking up when Wade sat down across from her. "Did you? The police came by my apartment yesterday. They're asking questions about his financial dealings, his associates." She finally met Wade's eyes. "They asked about you. What did you tell them?" "The truth. That Patrick used to work for you. That we'd met with him recently about some business opportunity, that I hadn't seen him since." Wade nodded. "Smart." Jessica laughed bitterly. Too little, too late for smart. They sat in silence for several minutes. Two people who had shared 15 years of marriage looking at each other like strangers. Which, Wade reflected, they probably always had been. "I never meant for it to go this far," Jessica said finally. "Yes, you did. You just didn't think you'd get caught." "No, I never meant to hurt you." "Not really." Wade studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What he saw instead was the same self-serving rationalization he'd heard from every criminal he'd ever known. The belief that wanting something badly enough justified taking it. "You took out a life insurance policy on me, Jessica. $2 million. She flinched. It wasn't what you think." "Then what was it?" "Insurance. In case something happened naturally. I wasn't going to." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Wade leaned back in his chair. "But you thought about it." The silence stretched between them like a confession. "What happens now?" Jessica asked. "Now you disappear. You take whatever money you manage to hide from both Patrick and me, and you start over somewhere I'll never see you again. And if I don't," Wade's smile was cold, "then you'll discover that Patrick wasn't the only one who owed dangerous people money." Jessica's face went ashen. "Wade, please. You have 1 week." Wade stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. If you ever contact me, if you ever try to come back, if I even hear your name mentioned in this town again, what happened to Patrick will look like mercy compared to what happens to you." He walked away without looking back, leaving Jessica to contemplate the ruins of a life she destroyed through her own greed and betrayal. Outside, Wade sat in his car for several minutes, feeling something that might have been sadness if he were the type of man who indulged in such emotions. 15 years of marriage gone. Not just ended, but revealed to have been a lie from the beginning. But Wade had survived worse losses. He'd survived poverty, violence, betrayal by people he'd trusted more than Jessica. He'd built an empire from nothing once before, and he could do it again if necessary. His phone buzzed with a text from Clarence. "Package handled. No loose ends." Wade deleted the message and started his car. Tomorrow, he would begin the process of rebuilding his life without the weight of people who had never deserved his trust. It would be different this time. Better. Because Wade had learned something valuable from Jessica and Patrick's betrayal. The only person he could truly trust was himself. And sometimes that was enough. Chapter 9. The New Foundation. 6 months later, Wade stood in the office of his fourth auto shop, watching the morning crew prepare for another day. The business had expanded faster than he'd projected, fueled by insurance money from Patrick's theft and the liquidated assets from his divorce settlement. The insurance company had paid out quickly once Wade provided evidence of Patrick's systematic embezzlement. They'd been satisfied with the police report of Patrick's disappearance and showed no interest in investigating further. People like Patrick disappeared all the time, and insurance companies preferred simple explanations. Wade's legal troubles had been minimal. Oliver Doyle had structured everything perfectly: the divorce, the business transfers, even the insurance claims. Jessica's signature on various documents had made her the legal owner of several debts she'd never known about, while Wade emerged clean and profitable. The new shop was in the part of town where Wade had grown up, a neighborhood that had gotten worse since he'd left it behind. But Wade remembered what it felt like to be young and hungry and looking for someone to give him a chance. He hired locally, paid well, and asked no questions about his employees' backgrounds as long as they showed up and worked hard. Clarence Combs stopped by every few weeks, ostensibly to discuss security for the shops, but actually to provide updates on situations that required monitoring. Jessica relocated to Phoenix. Clarence reported during one of these visits. Working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Low profile, no contact with anyone from her past. Good. You want me to keep tabs on her? Wade considered this. Jessica was broken, exiled, living in fear of consequences that might never come. It was a fitting punishment for someone who had tried to destroy his life, but it was also complete. She posed no further threat. No, let her go. Clarence nodded. What about the other matter? What other matter? Officer Seth Mayer, the one who warned you about Jessica and Patrick. Wade had been wondering when this conversation would come. Officer Mayer had risked his career to warn Wade about the conspiracy against him, and Wade didn't forget debts like that. What about him? His daughter needs surgery. Leukemia. Insurance won't cover the experimental treatment that might save her life. Wade was quiet for a moment, remembering another young police officer who had faced similar circumstances years ago. How much? $200,000. Handle it. Anonymous donation through one of the medical charities. Consider it done. After Clarence left, Wade walked through his shops, speaking with employees, checking on projects, maintaining the personal connections that made his business more than just another repair service. He learned long ago that loyalty was built on countless small interactions, not grand gestures. His phone rang as he was reviewing inventory reports. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Wade Wu. Mr. Wu? This is Detective Angela Maddox with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm investigating the disappearance of Patrick Mullins. I was hoping you might have a few minutes to answer some questions. Wade felt a familiar calm settle over him. Of course, Detective. What would be convenient? Actually, I'm in the area now. Could I stop by your shop? I'll be here. Detective Maddox arrived 20 minutes later, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and the kind of patient demeanor that suggested she was very good at her job. Wade met her in his office, offering coffee and projecting the helpful attitude of a successful businessman with nothing to hide. I understand Patrick Mullins used to work for you, she began. Yes, about 5 years ago. I had to let him go for theft. Did you press charges? No. It was a relatively small amount, and I believe in second chances. Detective Maddox made notes in a small notebook. When was the last time you saw Mr. Mullins? About 2 months ago. He contacted me about some business opportunity involving international real estate. We met for dinner with my wife, ex-wife, to discuss it. How did that meeting go? Wade's expression darkened slightly. Detective, I discovered during that meeting that Patrick had been having an affair with my wife and stealing money from my business accounts. I told him to stay away from me and my family. Did you threaten him? I told him that if I saw him again, I'd call the police and press charges for theft and fraud. I should have done that 5 years ago. Detective Maddox studied Wade's face carefully. Your ex-wife confirmed this version of events. I'm sure she did. You went through a divorce recently. Yes. Discovering your wife is cheating tends to end a marriage. Where were you on the night of March 15th? Wade pretended to think. Home alone. My ex-wife had moved out by then. I ordered Chinese food and watched television. I probably have receipts if you need them. That won't be necessary right now. Detective Maddox closed her notebook. Mr. Wu, do you have any idea what might have happened to Patrick Mullins? Wade was quiet for a moment, as if considering the question seriously. Detective, Patrick Mullins was a professional con artist who made a career out of stealing from people and disappearing before facing consequences. Based on what I learned about him during our investigation of the theft, he had enemies in several states and owed money to some very unforgiving people. What kind of people? The kind who don't call the police when someone fails to pay their debts. Detective Maddox nodded slowly. Thank you for your time, Mr. Wu. If you think of anything else that might be helpful, please call me. She handed Wade her card and left. Wade waited until her car disappeared from the parking lot, then called Clarence. We just had a visitor. I know. She's been asking questions around town for the past week. Very thorough, but she's not finding anything useful. Because there's nothing to find? Because we're very good at our jobs. Wade smiled. Good. That evening, Wade sat in his study, the same room where he discovered Jessica's betrayal 6 months ago. The safe now contained different documents, insurance policies that protected only him, bank statements showing healthy balances he controlled completely, and business contracts that would ensure his security for years to come. He thought about Jessica, probably lying awake in some cheap apartment in Phoenix, wondering if every knock on the door might be someone coming to collect on debts she didn't understand. He thought about Patrick, whose final lesson in consequences had been more permanent than Wade had originally planned. Most of all, he thought about the future. Wade Wu was 43 years old, financially secure, and completely free of people who might betray him. He'd learned to trust carefully and punish thoroughly, and those lessons would serve him well in whatever came next. His phone buzzed with a text from Officer Seth Mayer. "Mr. Wu, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for my daughter. The doctors say the treatment is working. I'll never forget this kindness." Wade smiled and deleted the message. Some debts were worth paying, and some favors were worth returning. But from now on, Wade Wu would choose very carefully who earned his trust and loyalty. Because Wade Wu had learned the most important lesson of all. In a world full of predators, the only way to survive was to be the apex predator. And Wade was very good at surviving. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.